Robert filed what was called a summary judgment against me, and he was trying to claim that I had done so much damage and that based on discovery, he could prove it and that we didn't need to go to trial. And I did all of these things and that he was going to ask for like millions of dollars from me. And the judge denied his entire summary judgment. So he didn't prove to a judge that I had done what he said and that it was enough to skip trial or to have, the whole case disposed of. Right. And I filed one too. And so mine was partially granted where they removed about 15 statements that I made, and they said that that was not defamation or actionable. And then because Robert, Miranda, and James, Derek, gave depositions claiming that I interfered in their contracts, which I did not, the judge needs to consider the fact that their depositions were under the penalty of perjury, and that because their testimony all matched, it would be a fact that the jury would need to decide.
Well, in my opinion, those are 3 lies that Katie Joy Paulson just told on her video that she ran to YouTube to make as soon as this order granting in part and denying in part motions for summary judgment was filed on June 23rd. I said in a recent video that Katie Joy was going to twist this, and boy, I was right. She was going to twist the fact that the order was granted in part, and it appears to be in Katie Joy's favor. But let's take a look at what the order really says in comparison to what Katie Joy said in her video, because I'm starting to believe that I read a completely different order than Katie Joy Paulson did. So let's get into it, y'all. So as we know, Katie Joy Paulson is being sued by 7M Films, Robert Shin, Miranda Derrick, and James Derrick for defamation. There are plenty of videos on this channel regarding that lawsuit. And we've seen her twist the facts along the way regarding the lawsuit and what was truly happening. And it makes sense. I mean, it's her lawsuit. She can say what she wants. But why lie to your followers? If she's lying to her followers about what's happening in her own lawsuit, what else is she lying to them about? If she can't be factual in her own lawsuit, why should we take her serious on anything else that Katie Joy says? The video I put out before this one did show a lot of those things, not all of them, but a lot of the things that Katie Joy Paulson said along the way throughout this lawsuit, that if you were to go look and read the filings, you would see that what she was saying is not true, is not factual, that she stretched the truth, whatever you want to call it. So when this order came out, I knew immediately that Katie Joy was going to twist it and tell her people a version that would make her look better in this scenario, to where she can stick to her narrative that she did not defame anyone, she didn't do anything wrong, and that this is a frivolous lawsuit that was filed upon her because they want to silence her, that they did not want her to share any information with Netflix. She's claiming in this video that she did that the reason why she's being sued is because she was part of this Netflix docuseries. But she was sued before Netflix even started the project. So yes, there were ideas that this was going to be pitched, but they did not sue her for that. And it's very clear whenever you read this order that Katie Joy Paulson was being sued for the things that she said, the statements that 7M considered defamatory, along with her actions and statements that affected all of the plaintiffs financially, whether it be through lost contracts or a damaged reputation due to statements that Katie Joy Paulson made about the plaintiffs. So let's take a look at this order, and along the way, I will include parts of the video that Katie Joy Paulson made regarding this order, and you can see how she twists the truth and is really strongly selling a narrative that she's being sued because they wanted to silence her, and that most of the statements were tossed out by the judge, that she did not interfere with contracts, and a bunch of other false nonsense defense. But one thing I wanted to point out, which I found quite funny and curious, as to why Katie Joy Paulson changed the title of this video so many times. The first title was, "I'm victorious. I won half my lawsuit and I don't have to pay Robert Shin $10 million in damages." She then changed it to, "They wanted to silence me, but I won. Court rules most of $10 million Netflix 7M case dismissed." Then she briefly changed it to, "After years of relentless attacks, I won. 7M TikTok $10 million defamation lawsuit mostly dismissed." That didn't stick long, and then she changed it to, "I just beat the $10 million Netflix's 7M TikTok lawsuit. Court dismisses most of their case." And of course, that didn't stick. So she finally settled with, "The $10 million lawsuit against me just collapsed. This is huge." You notice she took out the word win because this clearly is not a win for Katie Joy. And again, it's also not a win for 7M. Both motions were denied. And as we'll see, what was granted for Katie Joy is not as big as she's making it seem, and it's certainly not a win. She also took out the word Netflix, which in all reality, this lawsuit is not about Netflix and the docuseries it put out regarding 7M. Let's also take a look at what she wrote in the description under this video. It says, "After more than 3 years, I claimed a big victory in court with more than half of the lawsuit against me being thrown out by a judge. I also won when the judge refused to rule a summary judgment against me. This means I won't have to pay $10 million to Robert Shin, Miranda, and James Derrick. While part of their claims stuck, we have tons of evidence to prove our innocence. Find out what comes next." Well, first, as we'll see, half of this lawsuit was not thrown out. And yes, the judge did refuse a summary judgment against Katie Joy. But again, it's also not in Katie Joy's favor either, because if all of the evidence that she says she has that will quote unquote vindicate her, then it would have. And they would have granted in full Katie Joy's summary judgment, which, as we see, they did not, because here is what the order states. "It is hereby ordered that plaintiff's motion for summary judgment is denied. Defendant's motion for summary judgment is granted with respect to statements numbers 12, 21, 31, 39, 40, 42, 46, 62, 65, 67, 68, 69, and 80. Defendant's motion for summary judgment is denied in all other respects. Any discovery disputes shall be brought via separate motion." And as we'll see, there are 85 statements that 7M based their case on. The judge, as we'll see, removed 13, and it's not because of what Katie Joy says. So if you do the math, 85 minus 13 is 72. That is not half. That is not throwing out half of this lawsuit. In fact, it is just dismissing 13 statements, and not for a reason that Katie Joy says. So as a reminder, a summary judgment is a motion made before a trial asking the court to decide the case based on the evidence presented, and in this case by both parties, without proceeding to a trial. This is a way for the courts to try to remedy this case without it having to go to trial. But if there were no genuine disputes about the material facts in this case, then there would have been a ruling. There would have been one of the motions granted. And Katie Joy is saying she won. Well, if she won, she would have had her motion completely granted because there would have been no genuine dispute about material facts. However, that's not the case here, and this judge has decided that this needs to go to trial. Pretty much the entire case, not half. It's only minus 13 statements out of 85. So I'm guessing that after this order came out, Katie Joy felt the need to save face for all the things that she said prior to this, because she said that there's no way this judge would ever allow this to go to trial because, number one, it's frivolous and she's done nothing wrong. She did not defame anyone, and therefore it should be dismissed.
We fully believe that there are absolutely no grounds for this case, that the testimony provided by Robert, Miranda, and James all prove that there was no grounds for the case, that none of the claims that remain in the lawsuit can be proven. And so we have been given a motion and granted a hearing for a summary judgment in November. So in November, we will be presenting to the court all of the evidence that we have obtained through discovery and through the deposition process, and seeking to have the case fully disposed of and removed and dismissed once and for all.
Well, Katie Joy was a little ahead of herself there because it was not disposed of, I guess is what she was trying to say. Because if it was, her summary judgment would have been fully granted, not just granted in respects to removing 13 of her statements out of 85. And this is where Katie Joy likes to twist the truth. So this order is 18 pages long. I will not be reading it verbatim. We will go through it pretty quickly. But if you want to read this order in full, you can visit this website here. This is where you can find all of the filings for the case since April of 2022, when 7M first served Katie Joy for defamation. I also will be showing the full order here, although we'll be going through it kind of quickly, but you can always pause and read it here as well. So let's get started. Again, I'm not going to read this verbatim. I'm going to discuss some of the things that I find are quite important in this case. Again, others might have separate opinions, and that is fully okay. But one thing I will not be doing is focusing on things that are anti-Katie Joy and pro-7M. And as I stated before, it says here, plaintiff's submitted complaint contains 85 statements upon which their case is based. And these statements were provided in documents filed by both parties that included the statements and their corresponding links. It summarizes the history of the case that on March 31st of 2022, Robert Shin and 7M Films commenced this lawsuit against Katie Paulson of Without a Crystal Ball. Shortly thereafter, the complaint was amended to add Miranda Derrick and James Derrick as plaintiffs. The amended complaint pleads 9 causes of action. Count 1, defamation. Count 2, defamation per se, which respectively ultimately underlie the remaining counts. Plaintiffs allege that Ms. Paulson, via her Instagram page and other social media, defamed plaintiffs by posting false statements about 7M and associated individuals. The remaining counts are count 3, tortious interference of contract, count 4, commercial defamation, count 5, intentional infliction of emotional distress, count 6, negligence per se, count 7, deceptive trade practices, count 8, intentional interference with prospective advantage, and count 9, injunctive relief. Plaintiff's business is in the field of social media communications and marketing, as well as brokering deals between performers, particularly dancers, and commercial venues. Defendant, in her social media posts, as listed by plaintiffs, claims that plaintiffs, in addition to their commercial ventures, are involved with Shekinah Church, which plaintiffs claim that defendants characterize as a cult. Defendant has also made allegations that plaintiffs and other dancers have little to no control over their content, living arrangements, or finances. Plaintiffs argue that these claims are false and have resulted in their reputation and standing in the community being irreparably harmed. In Robert Shin's deposition, he explains the spiritual meaning behind 7M, as well as he testified that 7M does not provide the dancers wardrobes and that not all dancers are members of Shekinah Church. Additionally, he indicated that 7M does not impose consequences if church members miss church, that no one from Shekinah Church writes checks for dancers from their personal accounts, and that he is unaware of anyone from 7M writing checks for dancers from the dancers' personal bank accounts. And they have proof, clearly, that Katie Joy has stated all of these things, and I know for a fact that she has, and on numerous occasions, not just once, but she also was stating them as fact. That's how I took it, as well as 7M. He also denies that the dancers are living under tight control and are forbidden to do anything without the permission of him or one of his associates. associates. He also claimed that he never made any suggestion to the dancers regarding the 10-10-10 arrangement, which is 10% tithing, 10% offering, and 10% to the man of God. He further testified that he believes there is evidence of defendants contacting 7M sponsors, including Forever 21, advising that 7M is a cult and they should not work with 7M. Mr. Shin claims that the dancers have left 7M because of the defamation and hostility created by defendant and her followers, and that 7M has suffered financial losses due to their departure. In Miranda Derrick's deposition, she testified that Katie Joy interfered with her business by reaching out to brand deals with which Miss Derrick was collaborating and telling them not to associate or work with Miss Derrick. She also said that Katie falsely stated that Miss Derrick is a victim and that she does not run her own financial accounts, that she gives all of her money to her pastor and church, and that she does not speak to her family, that she only wears gifted clothes, and that she is associated with a cult. She also testified that no one at 7M or Shekinah Church has ever asked her to sign blank checks. She claimed that she provides her own wardrobe and that Mr. Shin only made recommendations about music. Miranda maintained that she has consistently lost income in brand collaborations since Katie began covering her and 7M, including Sutter Home Wine, Stronger, Keto, an athletic company, and a travel company. In James Derrick's deposition, he stated that Katie Joy interfered with a brand contract plaintiffs had with the Clippers, and he has earned less since Katie Joy started reporting on him. So Katie Joy interfered, according to 7M. She interfered with a lot of brand deals that Miranda Derrick was involved with, and that the main contract that Katie Joy interfered with James was the Clippers. But let's hear what Katie Joy had to say after this order came out regarding these depositions.
And then because Robert, Miranda, and James Derrick gave depositions claiming that I interfered in their contracts, which I did not, the judge needs to consider the fact that their depositions were under the penalty of perjury, and that because their testimony all matched, it would be a fact that the jury would need to decide.
I don't really know what she means by that their testimonies matched. I don't know what she's trying to say there. Like maybe they matched, so therefore they lied together, or maybe they matched because they were telling the truth, and maybe it matched to what they had within their evidence. I don't know. But one thing that I know happened is that within the summary judgment along the way somewhere, I believe it was Amber Stavig, which is 7M's attorney, I believe it was within her declaration. And she said that during Katie Joy's deposition, Katie Joy stated that she never, ever drank alcohol while on a live stream.
Ooh, look, I'm having a glass of wine. Robert likes to call me a drunk. I don't believe so. No religion, no. Okay. Get your wine o'clock, guys. Okay.
And as we all know, those aren't the only 2 times that she was drinking on a live stream. There are several. And I know that I have that included in videos on this channel as well. But if anyone's going to worry about maybe penalty of perjury, lying under oath, I don't know, Katie Joy, is this what projection means? So now in Katie Joy's deposition, she testified that she has a YouTube channel, a Facebook page, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and Twitter. She said she believes the Derricks are lying about not being controlled by the Shins via 7M because they both appeared incredibly coached. Katie Joy also testified that she based her accusations against Mr. Shin and 7M regarding financial control and sexual abuse based on the testimony of individuals influenced and harassed by Mr. Shin. However, she was unable to point to any specific testimony. So Katie Joy spoke to somebody behind the scenes guest didn't fact check it because there are no arrest records or anything related to Robert Shin and sexual abuse. And therefore, she stated as fact, but she wasn't able to prove that. She also explained that she based her reporting on Miss Derrick being taken advantage of on information provided by other individuals. Katie further indicated that at the time she reported that the Derricks were not married, she did not know if they were married or not. So why would you stay? And if you guys saw the post that she made about their marriage, calling it fake, did a whole live stream where she was trying to find marriage license and all these things. She told everybody they were not married, that it was fake, and that they were lying to all of their followers. Yet she admitted here in her deposition that she really did not know if they were married or not. Do y'all see what's happening here? Katie also stated in this deposition, y'all, that she has encouraged people to boycott plaintiffs and their social media, and she has shared information regarding companies who canceled contracts with plaintiffs. Katie Joy stated that she based her reports that Mr. Shin, 7M, and Shekinah Church groomed individuals based on public statements made by other people. I don't know. I find that kind of interesting. But plaintiff's amended complaint contains 85 statements that they describe as false allegations to support their claims. Some of the statements either do not have a link or they contain a statement that the post has been removed. What do you know? These 13 statements are the statements that the judge granted in part the summary judgment for. And let me read that again, because some of the statements either do not have a link or they contain a statement that the post has been removed. And removed by Katie Joy, might I remind you. Seeing as the court was not able to independently review these posts, it cannot be said whether or not there is a genuine issue of material fact as to whether they are defamatory, and it is appropriate to grant defendant's motion for summary judgment in regard to those statements. Only these 13 statements, because the judge was unable to view them herself and determine whether or not they are defamatory. So let's see what Katie Joy had to say in her video regarding these statements that she basically implies caused her to, quote unquote, win this case.
And I filed one too. And so mine was partially granted, where they removed about 15 statements that I made, and they said that that was not defamation or actionable.
Well, that's clearly a lie, because again, here it says some of the statements either do not have a link or they contain a statement that the post has been removed, as in deleted by Katie Joy. But let's listen to what she had to say one more time, because I just think it's so important to hear her lies.
And I filed one too. And so mine was partially granted, where they removed about 15 statements that I made, and they said that that was not defamation or actionable.
I will be doing another video to follow this one that shows, I will show you what each of these 13 statements were. And you can determine whether or not you feel that those statements being dismissed by the judge, whether they are beneficial to Katie Joy or not. I personally think that this makes no difference in helping her or hindering 7M really, because in all reality, there are 72 other statements that they can show they feel are, in fact, defamatory. In several of Ms. Paulson's posts regarding plaintiffs, she includes hashtags such as cults, Free Miranda, 7 Mountains of Influence, Free Miranda Derrick, trafficking, forced labor, true crime, facts, false prophets everywhere, false prophet Muhammad, human trafficking, and sex trafficking. All these hashtags were made in reference to one or all of the plaintiffs. Many of Katie Joy's posts mention that Miranda has been lured into a church that tightly controls their members, and that Miranda has been groomed, abducted, and brainwashed. Several of the posts also categorize Miranda Derrick and James Derrick as victims of 7M, claim Miranda does not have a car or home registered in her name, and state Mr. Shin and other associates of 7M are forcing her to have little to no contact with her family. Miranda denied all of these claims in her deposition. Katie Joy reached out to MAC Cosmetics to determine if they had a branding deal with Miranda and informed them that it appeared Miranda was falsely advertising that she was working with MAC Cosmetics. Katie also took a screenshot of James's Instagram story where he tagged Forever 21 for advertising purposes. Katie Joy posted the screenshot to her Instagram account with the text over Mr. Derrick's page stating, "Internet, do your thing." Katie Joy's other captions and reels refer to 7M luring dancers with unfulfilled promises, forcing dancers to isolate from their family, ostracizing dancers who refuse to submit to the church agenda, and holding the dancers captive. The posts also contain various statements that 7M is controlling the dancers' schedules, time, activities, wardrobe, music, body weight, and finances. She additionally claims the dancers' social media is controlled, curated, and fake, and the dancers are constantly and forcefully worked by 7M for the sole benefit of Mr. Shin and his associates. In addition to her written captions, Katie Joy recorded several Instagram live streams, I remember those very well, in which she states that 7M is luring in dancers and likely engaging in human trafficking, that Miss Derrick is not allowed to speak to anyone or be left alone and does not drive, and that the dancers are highly monitored by management and isolated from their friends and families. She compared 7M to a Jim Jones cult and accused 7M of human trafficking and forced labor. In both her live reels and her Instagram captions, she characterized 7M as quote-unquote predatory and stated that dancers are not getting paid a fair wage and are in a cycle of being trapped in a cult where every aspect of their life is dictated and controlled. Katie Joy called into question the Derrick's marriage and stated that she thinks all the dancers' marriages are fake. And the order states the Derricks are, in fact, married. Katie Joy stated that 7M is preying on and exploiting Black dancers. Katie Joy posted about contacting the LA Clippers regarding the information she said she discovered about 7M, and she claimed victory when 7M's performances were immediately and indefinitely canceled by the Clippers. She also stated that Robert is using the church shell nonprofit to defraud people and enrich himself by funneling donations to shell for-profit companies, which she compared to a money laundering scheme. I'm going to skip over this next part, conclusions of law. Feel free to pause and read on your own if you wish. I'm skipping it to save some time. Basically, this will refer to the judge's decision on whether the law, as applied to the undisputed facts, will support a judgment for either 7M or Katie Joy. Basically, it's essentially the judge's determination of which party is legally entitled to win or not win based on the evidence presented. So we're going to skip over this, not because it's not important or that it's not relevant. It's just to help save some time. So again, if you would like to read through it, please pause and read. But I want to also focus on these statements that 7M is suing Katie Joy for, these statements that they consider defamatory. So let's continue on. Count 1, defamation by law. The elements of defamation require the plaintiff to prove that 1, the defamatory statement was communicated to someone other than the plaintiff. 2, the statement is false. 3, the statement tends to harm the plaintiff's reputation and to lower the plaintiff in the estimation of the community. And 4, the recipient of the false statement reasonably understands it to refer to a specific individual. Truth is complete defense to a defamation action, and true statements, however disparaging, are not actionable. As a general rule, the truth or falsity of a statement is a question for the jury. Whether a defamatory meaning is conveyed is dependent upon how an ordinary person understands the language used in the light of surrounding circumstances. In deciding whether words bear a non-actionable meaning, the words must be construed as a whole without taking any word or phrase out of context or placing undue emphasis upon any one part. Epithets or adjectives can constitute defamation if they imply a specific type of reprehensible conduct. If the plaintiff is a public figure, the plaintiff must prove that the defendant acted with actual malice. Actual malice is shown only by proof of defendant's actual knowledge of falsity or reckless disregard of the truth or falsity of his publications. So, did Katie Joy act with actual malice? Did she know what she was saying was false? I know what I think, but clearly that's not for me to decide. So, while plaintiffs do not address whether or not they are public figures, they seem to concede that the actual malice standard applies to this case because they argue that they have satisfied the actual malice standard in their pleadings and make no mention of common law malice. Turning to the elements of defamation, the first element is satisfied as plaintiffs have proven that the statements were communicated to someone other than plaintiffs. Defendants undisputably made the statements at issue on a social media platform that was disseminated to a significant number of people other than plaintiffs. Second, there are several disputed factual issues regarding whether the statements were false or were made by defendants with reckless disregard of their truth or falsity. In the depositions of Robert, Miranda, and James, they dispute all of the statements made by Katie Joy in her various posts, including the meaning of 7M, the amount of control exerted by 7M and Robert Shin over the Derricks and other dancers, and that Robert and 7M were engaging in forced labor and trafficking. The truth or falsity of these statements is a question for the jury. Ms. Paulson argues that the statements made by her regarding the plaintiffs are her opinion and therefore do not qualify as defamation. However, the court carefully reviewed all of plaintiffs' videos and captions and does not find that they are all rooted in opinion. While Ms. Paulson occasionally claims in her posts that the information provided in her posts are her opinion or are based on other people's allegations, she usually follows up those posts with hashtags referring to trafficking, human trafficking, sex trafficking, cults, and forced labor. These posts must be construed as a whole. When looking at each post as a whole, a reasonable jury could find that Ms. Paulson acted with actual malice. Y'all, this is huge because Katie was saying that there was no way that she was ever going to be held accountable because she did not defame them, but mainly because she didn't act with malice. And the judge is stating here that this needs to go to a jury and that, yes, it is very possible that a jury could find that Katie Joy acted with actual malice. Katie Joy also argues that her statements referring to 7M as a cult is protected under the ecclesiastical abstention doctrine, which protects doctrinal statements as to whether a church is a cult. However, Shekinah Church is not a party to this proceeding. In this case, Ms. Paulson is referring to 7M being a cult, and such statements would not be protected under that doctrine. Furthermore, a reasonable jury could find that describing 7M as a cult could imply a specific type of reprehensible conduct. Third, a genuine issue of fact also exists as to whether these allegations could harm plaintiffs' reputation in the community and lower them in the estimation of the community. Presumably, a reasonable jury could determine that accusations of forced labor, human trafficking, and cult-like behavior could harm one's reputation and estimation in the community. Fourth, it is undisputed that all of Ms. Paulson's posts clearly refer to one or more plaintiffs either by the direct statements or the hashtags included with her posts. Because a genuine issue of material fact exists as to whether Katie Joy acted with actual malice, as such, a summary judgment is not appropriate on count 1. So, to me, this is pretty big, y'all, that the judge found a genuine issue of material fact on whether Katie acted with actual malice. So, she was set that this would not happen, but it did. And so on to count 2, which is defamation per se. I'm going to skip through this pretty quickly because defamation per se is going to refer to the statements that are so obviously harmful to the plaintiff's reputation. And those statements were considered in in count 1. And so with defamation per se, the law will presume that these false and harmful statements caused damage to 7M's reputation. And with the presumption that these false and harmful statements caused damage to all the plaintiff's reputation, then the plaintiff doesn't need to prove specific harm to recover damages. And here the judge states that the court further finds that there is a genuine issue of material fact whether Katie Joy acted with actual malice in making her statements, as discussed in detail in count 1. Because there is a disputed issue of material fact regarding whether Katie Joy acted with actual malice, damages cannot be presumed at this stage in the litigation, and summary judgment is not appropriate on count 2. Count 3, tortious interference of contract. The elements of wrongful interference with a contractual relationship are the existence of a contract, the alleged wrongdoer's knowledge of the contract, intentional procurement of its breach without justification, and damages. Plaintiffs testified that they had sponsorships and or contracts with such companies as Sutter Home Wine, Stronger, Keto, Forever 21, and the LA Clippers. Second, clearly Ms. Paulson knew of these contracts as some of her posts refer to plaintiffs' involvement with Sutter Home Wine, Forever 21, and the LA Clippers. Third, Ms. Paulson intentionally posted content which referred to her contacting the Clippers regarding plaintiffs, and another post where she stated, "Internet, do your thing," regarding plaintiff's partnership with Forever 21. Miranda also testified that she is aware that Katie Joy contacted brands with whom she worked. Fourth, whether Katie Joy's alleged interference was justified is a factual issue to be decided by the jury. Fifth, plaintiffs stated they have suffered loss of income since defendants allegedly interfered with their contracts. As there are disputed issues of material fact regarding whether Katie Joy wrongfully interfered with plaintiffs' contractual relationships, summary judgment is not warranted on count 3. But here's what Katie Joy had to say about some of these contracts, specifically and particularly the LA Clippers.
Now, the frustrating part about this is that there's like 3 separate contracts they claim that I interfered in. And I provided evidence to the court that I literally spoke to none of these companies. And the largest contract has to do with the LA Clippers. And Robert has been telling his people for a very long time that I interfered in his LA Clippers contract when I didn't. And I only reported that they had been dropped by the LA Clippers following all of these online reports, but I never spoke to LA Clippers.
Clearly, there are more than 3 contracts that they're claiming Katie Joy interfered with. But outside of that, I guess this is for the jury to decide. But for Katie Joy to say that she presented evidence to the court that she did not interfere with this contract, well, so did 7M, clearly. And so 7M's evidence might have outweighed what Katie Joy had to say that no, she did not interfere with the Clippers. So she can provide that evidence, as she said, at trial, and the jury can decide. Count 4, commercial defamation. If the defamation affects the plaintiff in his business, trade, profession, office, or calling, it is defamation per se and thus actionable without any proof of actual damages. A jury could reasonably conclude that the alleged defamation did affect the plaintiff's business, trade, profession, office, or calling. For example, Robert testified in his deposition that 7M is now defunct and has no clients. Similarly, both Miranda and James testified that they earned less income and gained less sponsors incrementally as defendant began posting about plaintiffs. Because counts 1 and 2 underlie plaintiff's commercial defamation claim, and the court finds there are disputed issues of material fact regarding those counts, summary judgment is not warranted on count 4. So count 5, intentional infliction of emotional distress, somewhere along the way was abandoned. I don't know why, but it's not included here, so that must be something they will not be focusing on clearly in this case. So on to count 6, negligence per se. In determining whether a violation of a statute constitutes negligence per se, a plaintiff must demonstrate that 1. The breach of the statute harmed persons intended to be protected by the statute, statute, and 2, the harm suffered is the type of harm the legislature intended to prevent. Plaintiffs rest their negligence per se claim on the criminal defamation statute. And they show what the statute states. You can pause and read. I'm going to skip through, again, just to save some time as this video is getting a little bit long. The order says that defendants argue that plaintiff's negligence per se claim must fail because the underlying statute was deemed unconstitutional in State v. Turner. Defendants are correct that the Turner case held that the criminal defamation statute was unconstitutional because it was overbroad in that it failed to narrow the definition of criminal liability to only false statements. However, the statute was amended after the Turner case to reflect that the person communicating the false and defamatory matter must have knowledge that it is false. As the correct version of the statute has not been held to be unconstitutional, plaintiffs can proceed with their negligence per se claim. Is that also a win for you, Katie Joy? Just asking. A jury could reasonably find that plaintiffs are the type of persons intended to be protected by the statute, as they claim Katie Joy's post exposed them to contempt and degradation in society, resulting in injury to their business. A reasonable jury could also determine the legislature intended to prevent this type of behavior by enacting this statute. Furthermore, there are several issues of material fact as to whether Katie Joy's reporting on plaintiffs was justified, such as if the communications were fair and made in good faith with persons participating in matters of public concern. As such, summary judgment is not warranted on count 6. Count 7, deceptive trade practices. A person engages in a deceptive trade practice when, in the court of the business, vocation, or occupation, the person disparages the goods, services, or business by false or misleading representation of fact. Defendants' statements regarding trafficking, forced labor, cult-like behavior, and strict control and isolation of dancers could all be considered disparaging. 7M, Mr. Shin, and the Derricks. The resolution of this claim will rest on whether or not the jury finds the statements were false. As such, summary judgment is not warranted on this count. Count 8, intentional interference with prospective advantage. There are 5 elements to a claim of tortious interference with a prospective business advantage. 1, the existence of a reasonable expectation of economic advantage. 2, defendant's knowledge of that expectation of economic advantage. 3, the defendant intentionally interfered with plaintiff's reasonable expectation of economic advantage, and the intentional interference is either independently tortious or in violation of a state or federal statute or regulation. 4, that in the absence of the wrongful act of defendant, it is reasonably probable that plaintiff would have realized his economic advantage or benefit, and 5, that plaintiff sustained damages. The plaintiff has the burden to demonstrate the existence of a reasonable expectation of an economic advantage. To that end, a plaintiff must specifically identify a third party with whom the plaintiff had a reasonable probability of a future economic relationship. Thus, a plaintiff's projection of future business with unidentified customers without more is insufficient as a matter of law. Furthermore, general damage to the plaintiff's reputation is insufficient to establish that an expectation of economic advantage was damaged. First, a jury could find that plaintiffs had a reasonable probability of future economic relationships based on their previous contracts and sponsorships and the fact that they had a substantial number of followers. They specifically identify such current and potential clients as the LA Clippers, Forever 21, and MAC Cosmetics. Second, Ms. Paulson clearly knew about plaintiff's economic expectations with these clients, as she would post about ongoing or potential relationships plaintiffs had with other sponsors. Third, a jury could reasonably find that Katie Joy intentionally interfered with these potential contracts as indicated by her posts regarding MAC Cosmetics and the LA Clippers. Fourth, a jury could conclude that it is reasonably probable that plaintiffs would have realized an economic advantage on these contracts based on their extensive social media presence and their history of significant earnings from their branding. Fifth, plaintiffs stated that they have made less money every year since Katie Joy's postings than the year prior. A jury could reasonably determine that loss is a result of Katie Joy's intentional interference. As such, summary judgment is not warranted on this count. So there you have it, y'all. All 8 counts. All 8 of them. The judge found a genuine issue of material fact and feels that a jury needs to make this decision. So let's look one more time at what Katie Joy said after she read this order, if this is the same order she even read, because here she is stating underneath her video, well, actually, this is her comment that she pinned underneath her video, and she states, after more than 3 years, I claimed a big victory in court with more than half of the lawsuit against me being thrown out by a judge. So we all just saw that that is not true. That is a huge misleading statement. I also won when the judge refused to rule a summary judgment against me. That's not a win because your summary judgment was mostly denied. And as we saw, the only parts that were granted were only 13 statements that could not be found by the judge because either they were deleted or the link wasn't working, but it wasn't because she considered them to not be defamatory. This means I won't have to pay $10 million to Robert Shin, Miranda, and James Derrick. Well, we don't know if you'll have to pay, what damages will be awarded to the plaintiffs. And it could be even more than $10 million. It could be less. We don't know. While part of their claims stuck, we have tons of evidence to prove our innocence. And from what I'm gathering, again, just my opinion from reading this order, that 7M has a lot of evidence to show otherwise. And to show defamation and loss of income due to Katie Joy's statements and actions. Find out what comes next. Are you sure you want people to know? Are you sure you want your people to know, Katie Joy, what's going to happen next? If you want to help our continued legal fight, please help this video in the algorithm by commenting, giving the video a thumbs up, and sharing. Also, if you wish to donate to our efforts, you mean your extensive, ridiculous legal fees that are about to occur? Okay. Please consider sending us super thanks, which you can find above near the title. Thanks for your continued support. Love you, Katie. So there's that. And throughout the video, Katie Joy was making it sound like it's not going to go to trial. I mean, did we not just read this order where the judge is saying a jury needs to figure this out?
And while in a court of law, he's never been held accountable. He will go to trial when it comes to Alicia's case and the 6 other people that are suing him. And if my case needs to go to trial, I think we'll have to go to trial, and we'll use his audio in his own words to show that we did not defame him. I provided that evidence to the court, and we're going to ask them to reconsider. But if, again, it goes to trial, I have evidence in my favor. I have Robert's own words in my favor. And no matter what he says or does, he's not going to silence my voice.
Well, the judge might be able to silence your voice and stop you from calling him such things as a predator or human trafficker or sex trafficker, all those things. But nonetheless, that's for us to find out whenever this trial may occur. The next thing we should see is a scheduling order that should outline everything regarding to the trial, the pretrial, etc. Katie Joy's team, if you want to call it that, they did submit a letter to the judge requesting to be able to file a motion to reconsider. So I might do a video on that. I don't know. However, I do need a little bit of a break from anything and everything Katie Joy. So thank you guys so much, as usual, for your support. Thank you for joining and watching. If you've not yet subscribed to this channel, please consider doing so. You can also hit that thumbs up and ring that notification bell, and you'll be notified anytime I go live or each time I put out a new video. In the meantime, Katie Joy says she's doing great, y'all. She has no worries. But I hope to see you in the comments below as well. Let me know all your thoughts about this and what Katie Joy had to say. Have a wonderful day, y'all. Oh, but here's a reminder of, how Katie Joy felt in one of her other lawsuits.
Watching your dreams fall apart. knowing that the money that you're now spending on legal fees was supposed to be for your child. It's like, it's so overwhelming.
Bye, y'all.